On the Talkback Show, on the radio, or whatever audiovisual device you choose to use. Welcome to the GBC podcast, where we talk about the Packers and our hometown of Green Bay. We are the official podcast of the Lot 1 Tailgate Party, which is at Lambeau Field every home game. This is episode 116, created September 30th, 2025. I'm John. I'm in Appleton, Wisconsin. Along with me, Jeff in Minnesota, and Neil on the East Coast. Say hello, gentlemen, and tell us what you're drinking.
Hello, gentlemen. Tonight from Fifth Ward Brewing Company, I'm drinking No Foolin'. So if you would have told me the Packers offense scores 40 points and we tie Dallas, say no foolin'.
Dogfish Head Brewery makes a whole series of different IPAs, from the very light 30-minute IPA. And I couldn't choose that because our defense didn't even play 30 minutes of defense in the game. But I said, instead, I'm going with their most full-bodied and rare release, the 120-minute IPA, because I think those offenses could have kept going for 120 minutes and it still would have been a tie game.
And again, you guys put way more thought into this than I do. I simply made something called a French martini. You can find us on YouTube and Twitter at Green Bay Chat, and Facebook at the GBC Podcast, Green Bay Chat. And just the audio is available on Apple Podcast as well as Spotify by searching for Green Bay Chat. Well, what are we talking about this week? It's the trip to Dallas, the draw in Dallas, if you will. The final score 40-40. And as the old adage goes about what a tie feels like, Neil, you're the only one of us with a sister, so you should go first.
This game managed to outdo Cleveland as far as the level of frustration that we had at the end of that game. This game started out so spectacularly. In our first four drives, we had 2 touchdowns and we're in Dallas territory twice. And in Dallas's first 3 drives, they had 2 threes and out and 5 plays for 15 yards. We were at 168 yards to 25, 7 drives into the game. And somehow we lost that football game.
Well, you said it right there. It's the 2 scoring drives for Green Bay. We can't even say Green Bay was up 14-0. They were only up 13-0. And Jeff, it's this ridiculous play from our beloved asshats that really just changes the scope of this game. It's like 13-2. Whoever the hell heard of a score of 13-2 in a football game?
It's so unusual to have a blocked extra point returned for the 2 points.
It's only the 15th time in the 10 years of the rule that if you're going for 2 and the defense gets an interception or picks up a fumble, or in this case, going for 1, blocks the kick, if they can bring it back to their own end zone, they get the 2 points. And probably a tank of oxygen as well. But nonetheless, they get the 2 points.
I have to say, globally, it's one of my favorite rules in all of sports. The sort of thing that you always hope to have that 2-point conversion. But Lord, you just don't want it to happen against your team. And unfortunately, the asshats did that to us.
Oh, if there was a special teams unit in the league that it was going to happen against, it's going to be Green Bay.
This one. Yeah. Absolutely. And that really turned the tide. There's so many other things that went into this. But you know what? When that happened, it was like, all right. And our text thread just sort of was like, oh, fuck, now what happens? Right? Because it's sort of the beginning of the end.
And that's a 3-point swing. And of course, a 3-point swing means if everything happens exactly the same, we win the game by 3 points in regulation. So for 2 weeks in a row, the asshats have cost us a victory. If we can kick field goals or kick extra points, we are 4-0 right now.
Yeah, it's nearly that simple. And that's what's so frustrating, because there's so many other good things, at least offensively, that happened in this game. I don't know what the hell happened with the defense. We'll be looking at this for weeks, and if they don't bounce back, that's a much, much bigger question. Okay, maybe chalk it up to another just bad game, worst case scenario early in the season, but 2 in a row, 2 just shit in the bed in a row, that's not okay.
It's sort of true that the game turned after that returned blocked extra point, but we actually held Dallas to a 3-and-out on their next drive, and we got down into Dallas territory on the following drive. This was still an opportunity that we could make it, say, a 20-2 game, or even it could have been higher, because I mentioned that we had 2 touchdown drives, and then 2 times we were inside the Dallas 50 among our first 4 drives. And this gets to the other big theme of the game, that Matt LaFleur really was outcoached. He did not make the coaching decisions that needed to be made, because when we get inside the Dallas 50 and it's a 4th and 2, the decision is not take a delay and punt, right? The second drive, we were the Dallas 49, 4th and 2. The 4th drive, we were to the Dallas 45, and we punted both of those times. If you're going to coach in a chicken shit manner, well, you can expect that your team is going to follow in that direction. And I think that if either one of those, we go and take the bold move, we might be talking entirely different about how the outcome of this game is.
Well, you're saying bold move, but in today's NFL, we've seen this happen to the good often.
The math favors it, right?
Yeah.
When you're inside the opponent's territory, 4th and short, the math favors going for it. Heck, the math favors it when you're on your own 35-yard line and going for it. So you get into the opponent's territory, and what is the point? What is the point?
So again, you talked about LaFleur being outcoached, or do you just think that he wanted to be that conservative and really put the game in the hands of the defense to be able to hold Dallas to nothing and the offense score at will when they were rolling?
I'm going to go back to a theme that I talked about last season, which is fundamentally when Matt LaFleur was making these decisions, he was both thinking, what play am I going to call and what should I actually do as far as the game is concerned? And I think that Matt LaFleur either needs to give up on play calling so he can focus on the big picture, such as time management, which we'll get to later, or he needs to designate someone to focus on big picture management. Let's just call him a head coach so he can focus on optimized play calling, because he's not doing both of those jobs at the level that he needs to be doing those jobs.
Taking that concept, though, Neil, big picture kind of things, when we take a look at kind of the coaching tree that LaFleur comes from, look at what Sean Payton did a few years ago when he had Wade Phillips as his defensive coordinator, and he effectively let Wade Phillips coach when the defense was on the field. That was pretty extreme. But is that something that LaFleur needs? Does he need a stronger D coordinator in there? Does he need a stronger assistant coach, offensive coordinator, something along those lines? What do you think the solution is?
Well, I don't have complete faith in Adam Stenavich. I think that's part of the problem.
Right.
And I have a suspicion that Matt doesn't either. Matt, I think, has appropriately a lot of confidence in his play calling ability, but he's got confidence that is based on him spending 100% of his time thinking about calling the offensive plays and not having to worry about all of the other ancillary things that are going on in a game. And there were just so many decisions during this game, and we've seen it not just in the Dallas game, where decision-making has been a problem.
And that decision-making has bit us in the ass. This is not this year's problem. This has been going on now for multiple years.
And big picture again, too, I just don't see making a change mid-season as being something
no, obviously not. That's not
either.
going to happen. No.
Right. So we can speculate all we want. It doesn't matter. This is the way the team is going to play for this year. We can voice our frustrations, but being owners, it only goes so far, right? Taking a look at the rest of that first half, Neil, yeah, Green Bay's got a nice 13-2 lead, but it really goes downhill from there in that second quarter to the point where you are trailing by 3 points at halftime.
Yeah, and going right off of that punt from the Dallas 45, it sort of looks like it's going to be a good decision because Dallas has to start on the 5-yard line, but then they go methodically down the field, 95 yards in little over 5 minutes, score a touchdown, and now it's 13-9. It's like, shit, what are we doing now? This is now a game. This is a situation where we went from complete dominance to something that is very much a ball game.
What happened? I mean, we were texting like, we have elite pass rushers. Yes. We have defensive backs that have been knocking away balls and passes and really stepping up. And like you said, Neil, it was this methodical drive. And it was suddenly we saw this sort of bend and then break defense that we had seen under this guy named Joe Barry, who's no longer here.
Drink.
You talk about the pass rush. I think the pass rush is there. There's some good hurries that happen throughout this game. There are times where you can tell Dak Prescott is throwing up a prayer. The question then becomes, why are the defensive backs playing so far off of the receivers? There are too many prayers that he threw up. I mean, he only missed on 9 passes in the game. So as we say, everything starts up front. This pressure that is put on him, why aren't the other 7 players out there flocking to the ball like we saw in those first 2 games?
I mean, that's the thing. So first of all, Dak played a really good game. Let's give Dak credit for this component, but they also called a game. They knew that what the Packers had done in the previous games as far as putting pressure. So there were a lot of short hitters, and they just were connecting because, yes, the Packers defense was playing back. I think the statistic for Dallas in the first half that is most amazing to me, Dallas had 9 first downs in the first half, 8 of them in the second quarter, and they were 0 for 3 on third down. That is, they converted on every single one of their first or second downs. They never converted from a third, but they just weren't making it to third down. There's your problem.
Neil, they didn't convert a third down until well into the third quarter. There was not this resistance. So for the first time, rather than press coverage, we didn't also see the linebackers and the defensive backs kind of flying around either. You're right. They were dumping off the ball, but rather than immediately going to the receiver, they were a step slow. They were a step behind. And that's why I said before, it seemed like we've seen this before, in that all of a sudden this great attacking defense for the first, call it 3 weeks, suddenly evaporates against Dallas because Prescott is getting the ball out quickly and decisively. He's not dumping it off. I think these were, like you said, these were designed passes, and the receivers knew exactly what to do once they got the ball methodically, and it worked like a charm.
And yes, it was all on Dak. Dak, 11 of 13 for 113 yards and a touchdown in that first half. Their rushing game basically did nothing in the first half, only 32 yards and 10 rushes. So it was that offense-oriented, it was that quarterback-oriented play by Dak Prescott. But, they score that touchdown. It's still 13-9. We still have a lead, and we're getting the ball back, right? So all is going to be good, right?
It seems so unexpected when Love fumbled the ball. It's like he didn't feel the pressure. It gets swatted out of his hand deep in our territory, and suddenly Dallas is set up.
And obviously they score the touchdown immediately on the next play. But this sort of gets into more of the asshats as far as the game is concerned, because the reason why we were so deep in our territory is because for one of 3 times during the game, including once in the fourth quarter and once in overtime, we allowed the ball to land in the landing strip and then go into the end zone. So we started at the 20-yard line. This was a case of hurting ourselves severely as far as field position in the game because the asshats couldn't trust themselves to get past the 20-yard line, or I don't know what the situation was, but clearly 3 times we started our own 20, and that hurt us a lot as far as ability to score in the game. And yes, we moved the ball a couple times before the strip sack fumble, but you're starting deep territory. You've got 41 seconds. You've got to have a little bit of urgency, and starting back 10, 15 yards from where you should is going to change the way that you make your play calls.
If this was maybe the first or even second game, sort of with the new rules or something, but this is game. We should be way past this and, again, be more decisive. And that decisiveness, not only for the asshats and the defense, just didn't really seem to be there.
And you say should be. I feel, especially watching that game, that there is that level of indecisiveness that is probably born out of what exactly happens if I grab the ball here versus there. And even as from the fan perspective, if you're a casual fan, you're probably wondering, well, how did they start at the 35-yard line in this situation, but the 20-yard line in this situation? It can be confusing. So there's got to be some type of spreadsheet, a laminated card, something that the coaches have that they need to make sure that not only is everybody on board, but really the 2 main guys, the 2 guys that are dropped back to collect the ball on the kickoff.
So the fumble happens, but I think for me, what was most disturbing is one play, 15 yards, boom, touchdown. Mm-hmm. This was not the defense suddenly that kept Cleveland. It took them, 7, 8 plays right at the goal line last week. Suddenly they're at the 15-yard line, boom, one play right before half. And like you said, now things are flipped. It's 16-13 at halftime, and Dallas gets the ball back to start the third quarter.
Well, and this is an offense that starts out great, right? We explode to start the game. The defense starts great. That first quarter is, for the most part, pretty spectacular. And again, being up, even if it's 13-2, we're doing pretty well at this point.
Until 5:50 left in the second quarter, right? Yeah, we were in good shape until 5:50 left in the second quarter when they started that 95-yard drive.
Yeah. So you can't get to halftime fast enough here. And it feels like there's some type of adjustment made, at least for the offense. The offense gets back on track. The offense, we can't really complain about too much. I mean, they scored 40 points. You've got 2 touchdowns from Josh Jacobs. Jeff, I don't care about your fantasy team, but I hope you started Romeo Doubs this week because he had the 3 receiving touchdowns. it's a beautiful game from that perspective. Jordan Love over 300 yards passing. He's very efficient, but the defense, this defense that was so vaunted for 2 weeks, what the hell are they doing? And do you guys know what Kingsley Enagbare and Devontae Wyatt have in common from the game on Sunday? They both have fewer tackles than Brandon McManus in the stat sheet. Brandon McManus, our kicker, was credited with 2 tackles in the game. Enagbare and Wyatt each have 1 assist.
To be fair, Wyatt only played 13 snaps, so not quite as bad as that. But I mean, that just speaks to the asshats. And yes, the asshats also allowed some big returns for Dallas in that game as well. But I mean, I wish I did have a statistic that would, something that's going to say obvious. And I mean, the only statistic is Dallas had 436 yards, 26 first downs. They played great, or we just sucked, and more likely a combination thereof. And I don't know.
Neil, I'll see your 436 yards for Dallas. We had 32 first downs and 489 yards of offense. The running game suddenly kind of got going as well. We had 164 yards rushing, 105 in the fourth quarter and overtime. The penalties, which were more problematic against Cleveland, we ended up with 7 penalties, but not that many. I mean, they kept pulling us back a little bit, holding. We had the wonderful false starts. We've had 10 false starts by the offensive line, which is a league high at this point. But so those little things, yes. But we had all these first downs. The offense was moving it. What more could the offense have done? I don't think
the offense could have scored more than 13 points in the first half. When we had 191 yards in the first half, we should have had more than 13 points. And I'm going to back off on that running back. If you look at the total running back stats, yes, they are great. But in the second quarter, we had 7 rushes for 13 yards. In the first half, Jacobs had 8 rushes for 16 yards. What is keeping us from those additional scores with all of the things that Jordan Love and the receiving core are doing? It's because our offense wasn't moving on the ground in the first half. Now, they made up for it in the second half. In the second half, there really is nothing you can say negative about the offense, but maybe other than the play calling on the offense at a certain point. But fundamentally, the offense did all the things that you expect. If you score 40 points, you should win a football game. Straight out, you should win a football game.
And talking about points, right? The only stat that matters, points. When we look at the defense, through the first 3 games, this defense leading the league in allowing only 44 points. They allow 40 points in this game alone. Well, I guess technically the defense allowed 38 points, right? Special teams allowed the other 2. But first half, though, again, going back to the first half, there's a lot of strength in that. This is a defense that on the season has now only given up 22 points in the first half, 6 through the first 3 games and 16 here. That's still a pretty good 5 points roughly per game in the first half. This is a defense that is doing things right at the right time, Neil, but they're still not putting together 4 quarters of football.
The only thing you can say is you've got to look at those highline numbers. We only had 1 tackle for loss in the game. Dallas had 6 on us. We only had 1 sack for 0 yards. Now that was really critical as far as not.
It was a very important sack where it came.
But 0 sacks in regulation as far as the game.
Yeah.
4 passes defense. That was pretty good with 2 by Nixon. 5 quarterback hits. That's down from what we had done the week before. You just expect more with the number of offensive plays that both teams have. The more plays, the more passing plays. Dallas had 41 passing plays, 1 sack and 41 passing plays. Even 5 quarterback hits and 41 passing plays is not a ton when you're supposed to be an elite defense.
And it's not what we saw through the first 3 weeks. Was it that Dallas came up with the perfect game plan? Because we had all the drama going to Jerry's world. Were they more up for the game, they being Dallas, than the Packers? Did they come in flat? It just seemed like they were a step behind, especially on the defense, a lot of the game. Again, is that coaching? Is that just wanting it more? Or did they just expect, again, to come in and say, okay, we're just going to dominate this team? Remember, Dallas had one of the worst offensive lines in the league. We were counting on that. We talked about that. Like, oh my gosh, this is going to be great. And you know what? They played really well.
And Green Bay, A, make a splash with Micah Parsons. B, they played better in the first 2 games than expected by beating Detroit and Washington, right? So now after that, we have the Cleveland Browns and the Dallas Cowboys with all of their foibles. These are 2 teams who probably have played their best games of the season. And it's something you have to expect now. If you are going to dominate, if you want to be a Super Bowl contender, expect your opponent to be giving maximum effort and playing their best game of the season against you. You cannot overlook anybody. I said they overlooked Cleveland looking at Dallas. And you know what? If that was the case, they should have been ready for Dallas then because they kept this game marked on the schedule. Here's the good news. The Dallas game is behind us. All of the bullshit with the trade is behind us. This is a bye week. It's a great time to regroup. You've got a banged up Cincinnati team coming in week 6. This team needs to regroup and just, as LaFleur says, one game at a time, 1-0 every week. Let's not look at anything beyond that.
But as we're regrouping, let's actually look back and note that there were some really positive things from Jordan Love in particular in this game. Jeff and I are both wearing our Love jersey.
Right.
And Jordan Love was so critical in making so many big plays throughout the game, as he has in other weeks this season. Looking overall in the season, Jordan Love is now plus 0.35 in expected points added per play. First in the NFL among all quarterbacks, ahead of Josh Allen. In just this game, I looked at some big plays by Jordan Love. 3rd and 9 on the first drive, a 45-yard pass to Golden. 3rd and 5 at the Dallas 17, 16-yard pass to Kraft. 2nd and goal, touchdown pass to Dobbs. 3rd and 18, 16-yard pass to Williams. 2nd and 19, a 28-yard pass to Jacobs. That pass to Jacobs that could have been a lateral, right? That was one of the most amazing plays as far as a pure athleticism and decision-making as one could have. Dobbs touchdown on first and goal. 3rd and 4 conversion due to the quick snap and 12 men. 3rd and 10, pass to Kraft for 12 yards. That was the play before the strip sack. And then in the fourth quarter and in overtime, big plays to Dobbs, to Golden, and to Wicks and to Dobbs again. So many huge plays that are keeping us moving, especially when we're in 3rd and medium and 3rd and long, something that has really been a bugaboo for us this season. It doesn't matter if you end up not getting as much on those first couple plays, if Love is going to rescue you every time. Now, I don't want Love to have to rescue us every time, but he has been doing that. He has been Superman as far as this offense has been concerned.
And with that, Neil, it's 10 receivers targeted, not just 10 targeted, but 10 receivers who make catches. And Malik Heath gets the one target. He gets the catch for 9 yards, and it's a minimal line in the stat sheet. But at the time, that is one of the biggest plays of the game right there. He came in, did his job, and it looked great.
And not only spreading the ball over the course of the game, but in each of the individual quarters. He had 6 different people catch a pass in the first quarter, 6 catch a pass in the second quarter, and 6 different people catch a pass in the fourth quarter. I mean, it was spreading the ball around throughout the entire game.
And you mentioned that unique pass to Josh Jacobs. Jacobs has effectively, right, Jeff, we talked about a breakout game. Is it really a breakout game for him? No, because he is an elite player, but he does what we've been expecting from him. Now on the ground, 22 carries for 86 yards, but 2 touchdowns on the ground as well. He has a good day for this offense.
Well, and in the second half was the big one because 14 carries for 70 yards and 2 touchdowns in the second half. A huge second half. But this is a sort of a recurring theme, right? We have seen this team start out slow on first down, second down, and then Love needs to rescue them. But what was happening in the second half, in my opinion, was that we used the pass to set up the run. We had huge running both by Jacobs and by Wilson. Those were set up basically because Jordan Love was torching the Dallas defense, and that opened up the holes as opposed to, well, you're on first down. The Packers, of course, are going to run on first down. It's second down. Of course, the Packers are going to run on second down. Instead, they expect that the Packers are going to be passing, and that opens up the holes for Jacobs, allows him to do the damage that he did, as well as Emmanuel Wilson. Huge
using the pass to set up the run like the old Holmgren days, right, Neil?
Absolutely. That's what it was. That's what it was. We were not moving the ball in the first half. They adjusted clearly in the second half, and the running backs feasted in the second half because they were playing pass first.
And just 2 Jeff sweeps for 6 yards. Jeff, is this a play that if you had the ability to sneak into 1265, would you just cut all those plays out of the playbook?
Burn those plays, John. That's not okay.
But again, those are both in the first half. And I think that's the thing, right? This is fundamentally a problem that we just seem to have rushing downs in Everyone is seeing what a rushing down is, and it's just not working. There has to be an element of surprise. And this goes back to what I was saying about Matt LaFleur and play calling, is that we are in these ruts for periods, and Love absolutely covered for us in the first half. And we've got to make sure that the defenders don't know what is coming towards them. Just because Josh Jacobs is in doesn't mean that you're going to be doing a running play or a swing pass to Jacobs. The ball has got to be, basically, it can go anywhere on any given play. You've got to keep that element of surprise at maximum level. And fundamentally, that happened in the second half because we're so successful in the passing game.
One of the things we still didn't really see in this game is great tight end play. They were not getting open 10 yards down the field, in the middle of the field. We're still waiting for one of these to happen. Now, Musgrave, he was only targeted once for 6 yards. Looks like he's blocking on a lot of the plays. He's not even going out into the routes. So, Tucker had a solid game, 5 catches for 56 yards on 5 targets. But I think it was Josh Jacobs. He was our leading receiver here with 71 yards on 4 receptions. So you're right. Love is spreading the ball around. And maybe we just start chucking it around early in the game a lot more and just fall back on that running in the third or fourth quarters.
Jeff, I want to follow up your statement on the tight end play, because that is an element where we have been predictable. And so in the game, we played 11 personnel. 11 personnel means 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers on 50 snaps, and had 7.5 yards per attempt plus 0.465 expected points added per play. That is enormous. When we played 3 wide receivers, we were great. We played 12 personnel, which means 2 tight ends on 27 snaps. We averaged 3.2 yards per attempt and negative 0.002 expected points added per play. Fundamentally, when we've got 2 tight ends, it is telling the defense we are going to run first. And if you look overall as far as the season is concerned, Luke Musgrave has had 76 snaps on offense and has only gone out to run a route on 21 of those plays. On 52, he was blocking only. He's only had 4 targets in the entire season. Is because fundamentally, when Matt LaFleur is putting out 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, it is saying we are running the ball. We are not putting the threat of passing when we've got 2 tight ends on the field, and that adds to this fundamental element of predictability for offense. We've got to engage Luke Musgrave, but we've got to do it by actually mixing up what we do when we've got the 2 tight end sets rather than something that is almost always a running play.
And I think, Neil, when I talk about kind of regrouping in the bye week, that's one of those things that I think I'm talking about. You've got predictability through 4 games, right? Now it's time to look at that playbook, Jeff, maybe take the Jeff sweeps out. Hey, great. Let's ignore them for a while. Bring them back in week 12 and surprise everybody, right? Let it go to the wayside for a bit. And to Neil's point, now you've gotten that predictability of 2 tight ends. Put your 2 tight ends out there and throw the ball. Or put the 2 tight ends out there and have one of them line up as a slot receiver or something crazy. Just pick something off of that. There are things you can do. And I always this is my downfall as a Packer fan. When stupid shit happens, I always say, "Oh, I think they're setting that up for later in the year," or they're not tipping their hand, or they're doing something to say, "Hey, we're going to bring a surprise out later." It doesn't always happen that way, which is unfortunate. But here I am, the eternal optimist. Let's let that happen in the bye week.
Let's hope that happens. But fundamentally, what you're saying is we're not doing everything we can to win a given game. We're playing this 4D chess. But guess what? When you lose the game or tie the game, which is a half a loss, you've lost the 4D chess already.
One position we haven't talked about yet tonight is the offensive line. The injuries, the fact that they held up. Love only got sacked once. It was a huge sack, obviously. But you know what? I think with the bye week, let's talk about healing. Let's get this offensive line back whole and on the same page.
Because it is offensive, right? I mean, you have 3 guys that are out in Tom, Belton, and Bank. So it forces you to patchwork this offense, right? And there's something else I don't like about Elton Jenkins at center. And I did pay a lot of attention to him in this game. There's something about his technique of having to look through his legs and kind of stay in that position. There were a lot of times where he is looking through his legs on the snap and then coming up to figure out where the play is. And it's not a lot of time that it takes to do that, but it's enough time that there could be a switch. You may have gotten your blocking assignments, but there's something I don't like about his center play right now, or at least not in this game.
Right. But I mean, there's nothing we can do about that too, because we certainly aren't bringing Monk at center. We can't move Sean Ryan from guard, I think, either, because I don't think
Yeah.
he's got that same level of experience. I think the big thing that Jeff started to point on, though, that I think is really important in this game, yeah, our second half in particular, we were really good on the offensive line. If you include all of the plays plus the penalties, there were 83 snaps. There were 5 players plus Jordan Love who played all 83 snaps. Kennard, Morgan, Walker, Ryan, and Jenkins. We had the same line for every single snap of the game on offense. And that's a huge thing as far as building continuity, building this understanding that you need as far as what your teammates are going to do, such that you know and move as a unit.
I'm wondering if crowd noise also had an influence on this as well, because the first 2 games were at home. They looked really good. They were really sharp. The last 2 on the road, really discombobulated, false starts, things like that. Now they get to go back home the next game against Cincinnati. They're back at home. So the crowd noise shouldn't be a factor for the offensive line, and maybe that'll give them some more confidence as well.
Right. But I mean, the offensive line issues, there was the holding on Jordan Morgan. There was the let's move the ball forward by Elgton Jenkins and get the penalty on that. I hate the analysis says, well, that was not such a big, no, it was a big deal. He moved the ball that much forward. And, when you're right at the goal line, that's not an insignificant amount. That's the sort of thing that, yes, there's an experience element for Elgton Jenkins with that, but I think they're learning. I think this is the important thing, is that these players are learning each other. They have learned how to deal with the changes. This line is getting better. I mean, just go to the top line numbers on offense. Clearly, we were able to move the ball, especially in the second half. We moved the ball essentially at will in the second half. Between the Cowboys and the Packers, they had 9 straight drives that resulted in either touchdown or field goal. So offense was not an issue in the second half at all. And the line has to get credit for some of that.
And to an extent, yeah, there's a lot of scoring. We don't have to worry about the offense from that perspective. But Neil, there's a level of urgency that just was not happening at either the end of the game or the end of regulation.
We get the ball back behind, and there are 43 seconds left. This is a time of absolute urgency in the fourth quarter. And we move the ball down there quickly on a number of plays, and we get down to 22 seconds. We've moved the ball so well. We need a field goal to tie. Certainly a field goal is the minimum, but you've got to be thinking, if we can't stop the Dallas offense, we've got to be thinking about scoring a touchdown. But more importantly, why put a risk of making the game dependent on a kicker? Why take the risk of overtime? Because there's always risk when you go to overtime. And then we go run, call our first timeout, run, incomplete, and we force a 53-yard field goal, which credit where credit is due. McManus did make that 53-yard field goal, but we made it way more difficult than we needed to on him. And it's basically because we let off the gas once we got within field goal range on that last drive in regulation.
That's exactly what I was thinking. They got to a certain point and they said, okay, we can play for a field goal now. And they got complacent and they didn't keep pushing. And there's just something there that trips mentally. And it's like, why? Just please keep playing your game and push down there.
And the Dallas defense was on their back heels, right? This is a situation where you want to push against the defense because they're tired. They're just as tired as you are, but you're the offense. You know where the plays are going. You've got those opportunities, and you've got all of your timeouts as far as getting as close. And so maybe you throw it up the middle, and maybe it's a 10-yard reception, but because they're tired, the receiver snakes on through and scores the touchdown. We win the game, and we're not even talking about this.
And I get running in that situation because you have all 3 timeouts. But it literally becomes the most obvious running play that it could happen out there as well. And it's, again, that game planning, that strategizing, that level of urgency, something there is missing.
Or that's when you put in the wrinkle, the gotta have it play, something that the defense is not going to expect, rather than just handing the ball off and hoping for the best.
Yeah, a play action certainly would have worked there because, like I said, to me, it felt like an obvious running play because you're getting close. You want to just get some yardage. And you've got timeouts to use, it gets frustrating.
I mean, the only defense there is that you could not take a sack. A sack would be, in that situation, something that could take you out of field goal range. That is the only defense when you're down at that 17 seconds regime. But in the overtime period, that's not a defense at all.
But considering the Dallas defensive line wasn't getting any pressure on Love anyway, keep throwing the ball. That's what got you there. That's what got us back in the game. That's what kept us ahead. Keep throwing the damn ball.
don't coach scared. We had several instances earlier in the game where Matt LaFleur coached scared. Very much in that situation, he was coaching scared. You can't do that. That you've got to win the game. You've got to have the mindset that you need to win these football games. Do what you need to do to win. If you need to kick the field goal, go ahead, certainly take that field goal. But we were not in a situation where we needed to just basically play for the center of field because it was a chip shot that was absolutely guaranteed to go in to tie us the game and take us to overtime, because we're a lesser team, and just making it to overtime in Jerry's world, that's a huge accomplishment, and we should be happy we made it to overtime. Now, fuck that shit. You've got to play to win.
Still haven't lost there, though, Neil. Still haven't lost there. But with that said, though, too, I feel like at the end of overtime, or once you get within that 2-minute warning, even though a 2-minute warning is given, saying in 2 minutes this game is going to end, I felt like there were people on that field who thought this is the end of the quarter, that if we get a chance to score, if we don't score at the zeros, they're going to put 10 more minutes back on the clock. I don't know why anyone would think that, but they weren't playing a 2-minute offense inside the 2-minute warning.
But John, it was actually even before that point, because we got the ball back down 3 with 4:40 left in overtime. And we started on our own 20 because, again, the asshats have got an asshat, but we had a couple of quick plays, a couple of incompletions. The 4th down conversion to Matthew Golden for 14 yards was critical. That's with 3:50 left. And from 3:50 left until the 2-minute warning, we made 2 plays. We had a Wilson run for 9 and a Wilson run for 13. In a minute 50, in an urgent situation where you absolutely need a touchdown in order to win the game, 2 plays from 3:50 down to the 2-minute warning. And yes, plenty of appalling things after the 2-minute warning, but it started before the 2-minute warning.
That's what was weird. It's like the players, maybe some of them didn't know there's nothing after this.
That's coaching. That's all coaching.
Yeah.
Neil, you mentioned that minute 50, and watching the game, I thought I was crazy. I thought, how the hell did a minute 50 go off the clock here? Did the timekeeper speed up the clock somehow? I truly could not figure out how they got to the 2-minute warning from that moment so quickly. And it literally just happened that way. The other thing that is surprising too, right? How do you let the hometown clock tender, or whatever you want to call him, not tick that last second off the clock after the incompletion to Golden in the end zone? Boy, do they get lucky on this last play of the game.
But this was deja vu all over again.
Yeah.
So we just talked about how shitty the play calling was and the lackadaisicalness at the end of the 4th quarter. So now they've got an opportunity to redeem themselves in overtime. But basically, it was the same thing that happened.
It was worse. It was actually worse. Our first play after the 2-minute warning is a 15-yard pass to Wicks, and it was 45 seconds before we ran our next play. And then from that, it was still another 23 seconds before we ran our next play. And how can you let that much time go off when a touchdown is what you need to win the game? And to score a touchdown, you need to have as many good shots at the end zone as possible. And these sort of plays that we made, it's just like they first of all didn't have a great chance as far as scoring is concerned. But more importantly, if that doesn't work, that's fine. Like, you take the pass to Golden that lost 3 yards, like one good block, and that's something that could have sprung. But once it doesn't, you've got to really move. You've got to have that urgency. And like even on the run to Wilson, 28 seconds left after the timeout, negative yard, and then we didn't do our next play. That incompletion, that one that very well could have been the end of the game, it was 22 seconds from the negative 1 yard pass to Wilson to when we did that incompletion that thankfully got knocked down. And because it got knocked down, there was 1 second left on the clock.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that could have just been the fatal error right there. That thing goes bouncing up. Game's over. They don't even have the opportunity to kick the field goal. So, again, once bad, learn from it, but twice in a row?
I texted you guys and said that what the Packers need to do the entire bye week is just work on the 2-minute drill, because that was just appalling. And yes, coaching is the number one component for that. If the players are doing that, it's because they have been not had it drilled into them, the level of urgency that is necessary. But even in the game, right? Matt LaFleur can speak in Jordan Love's ears and say, you've got to get this playoff quickly. He clearly didn't do that.
And again, that final score, 40-40, it is a tie, brings the Packers to a record of 2-1-1 on the season. Now, you guys, when we revamped our predictions for the season, you have to remember I stuck with 2-2 at the bye. I can't even rest on that and say, hey, I had the 2-2 right. It, even though I had the wrong 2 wins, it doesn't matter. But it's an interesting half game in the standings. We are in second in the NFC North. We had Detroit at 3-1. We're 2-1-1. We're ahead of Minnesota and Chicago right now. So this is a half game that changes things late in the season when it comes to juxtaposition for winning the division or even getting into the playoffs. So it's not a loss. Well, is it still kissing your sister? I don't even know if it's that. It's a tie. It happened. It's the way the game ended. We've got a bye week. Time to regroup and just get ready for, because it's a long season after this. This is an early bye in week 5. We got a lot of season left after this.
This bye probably couldn't happen at a better time. We needed to regroup. We needed to heal. So for the Packers and their fans, I think Thanksgiving came a little bit early this year. We've got this bye week. We've got the chance to now make the season right. We've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. Let's take a week off, regroup, and come out with more of a sense of purpose and urgency after the bye.
One of the keys to success in anything in life is self-scouting. You've got to be willing to analyze yourself critically. And I hope that the bye is spent by Matt LaFleur, self-scouting what he is doing as far as time management and play calling. Same on the offensive coordinator side, same on the defensive coordinator side. We clearly have parts that are capable of being good, and they have shown brilliance on the offensive side. They've shown brilliance on the defensive side. But we haven't gotten those two parts coming together as often as we've liked, and certainly not in the last 2 weeks. And so that time spent reanalyzing what you're doing, what's working, and most importantly, what's not working is going to be the key towards how we respond from here and move on in the season. They've got to be willing to criticize themselves as anyone does, and that will be the impetus that's going to lead us to success in this year. Go Pack, go.
And I think it's adorable how the two of you dressed each other for this episode. All right. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit subscribe and leave a comment. Find the GBC podcast at Green Bay Chat. That's all one word, Green Bay Chat. We are on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Blue Sky, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. On Facebook, it's the GBC podcast Green Bay Chat. And you can follow us on any and all of those social media platforms. And may you fully appreciate the magnitude of your impending good fortune. Thanks for joining us.
Good night.